then keep on watching. So to begin, I'm using the Tatcha Dewy Skin Cream to prep Ali's skin with. This is going to get the skin to that hydrated and plump stage that allows for the complexion products to lay down so beautifully. It's great for those with normal to dry skin, while if you have normal to oily skin, I'd recommend the Tatcha Water Cream. To complement this, I'm using the One Size Secure the Blur primer and lightly dabbing this onto the T-zone. So if you're just getting into primers and all that, One Size makes really great formulas for different purposes. They have a primer targeted for oil, another for sweat, but this one helps smooth out texture or pores while also controlling shine throughout the day. A little goes a long way, so don't feel the need to apply a generous amount as you would, let's say, like a moisturizer. Less is definitely more here. For foundation today, I'm using the Laura Mercier Real Flawless Foundation, picking it up onto a brush and lightly applying this onto the T-zone area before blending it outwards. By the end of this makeup look, I want the skin to remain looking like skin. I don't want it to look like, makeup is just packed on. So by applying this foundation in the areas I want the most coverage, such as the T-zone, and then shearing it out, we're using less product than we would need to. We can still see her beautiful freckles and skin peek through with a natural, radiant finish. I think that's why I've been liking this foundation so much. It has that skin-like finish to it. It's medium in coverage, but it's such a thin and silky smooth formula. I only used one pump, applied it on with a brush, and then using a clean makeup sponge to go over everything once more to pick up any excess product. To bronze and contour, I'm using the Makeup by Mario Soft Sculpt Contour Stick, and take a look at how I apply this. I'm picking it up with a fluffy brush, patting off the excess onto the back of my hand, and then lightly dabbing this onto the areas of the face I'm looking to build up warmth, such as around the forehead, cheekbones, and jawline. I'm not drawing on harsh lines onto the face and all that because that often leads to using way too much product. And, honestly, it's a lot more work, whether you're a beginner at makeup or even a pro. Either way, applying it on with a brush first, we have more control of placement and the amount of product we're using. And then I head back to our sponge, of course, to lightly go over everything once more for a seamless blend. To conceal today, I'm using the Natasha Denona High Glam Concealer and applying this to the under eye, focusing this product around the mid-cheek area. I'll list the shades of everything I'm using today down below in the description box, but what I want you to notice here is I'm not applying the concealer all the way up to the lash line because by the time we start blending this out with our sponge, the concealer is going to travel up there anyway. And oftentimes when people load up the under eye with too much product, it's naturally going to start settling into those fine lines and end up looking cakey. So much like all the products and steps you'll see in this tutorial, less is more, and if need be, you can always add a touch more concealer in the areas you'd like. To add some color onto the cheeks, I'm using this Buxom Plump Shot blush in the shade Tickled Pink and picking this up with our brush before building up the pigment onto the high points of her cheeks. I want to give a quick shout out to Buxom and to thank them for sponsoring today's video because when they allowed me to share some of my favorite Buxom products, I knew I had to include these blushes. They're pigmented, they plump up the cheek, and because it's a cream to powder formula, I find it to be extremely beginner friendly to use. We get the easy blend of a cream, but with the long-lasting soft matte finish of a powder. Now, speaking of powder, I'm going to take this Laura Mercier translucent setting powder and use this to set the under eyes into place with a powder puff, lightly pressing that product in so that the concealer doesn't crease up or move throughout the day. The reason I wait to set the concealer until after the blush is because I like to apply and blend out all the cream and liquid products together first and then use our powder formulas on top of it. And let's say you start noticing your concealer creasing during the time you're applying on the blush, it's not the end of the world, I promise. Just tap it out a little bit with your sponge and then apply the powder. Now, once the under eyes are set into place, I'll use the same powder to set the rest of the face, but this time with a fluffy brush. You see, a brush is going to provide a thinner veil of powder, so we'll still get some of that glow peek through. But if you have other areas of the face, like the chin or nose, that you find get shiny faster, use the powder puff to press on the powder. You don't have to spend a lot of money on these puffs. You can usually find them at your like your local drugstore or neighborhood beauty store, but using a tapping motion is important because we never want to drag or tug on the skin. Next up, I'm using the Charlotte Tilbury Film Star Bronze and Glow and applying this to the same areas that we had applied the cream bronzer earlier, so around the forehead, cheeks, and jaw. We're not packing on this color, but rather dusting it on to further define her features, using light-handed sweeping motions. And then you'll see me in a moment take our setting powder to use the baking technique underneath the eyes and along the jawline. This will really set the products into place and brighten up these areas once we come back to wipe it off later on. Now, if you find it easier to completely skip over the cream bronzer step and just go right into powder bronzer, or skip over the baking step, that's absolutely fine too. I think it's easy, especially for beginners at makeup, to start feeling overwhelmed with all the steps. You know what I mean? So trying to keep this as digestible and approachable as possible, find what works for you and know that as long as it gets you to the same finish line, that's all that really matters. So moving right along, I'm using this Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Powder Duo to fill in Allie's brows with. Now her brows are already quite full, so I'm just focusing this product on the outer half to extend the tail of the brow. I personally think a powder formula can be a little easier to work with than a pencil sometimes, and oftentimes you don't even need to go out and buy a brow powder. Just take a look at the eyeshadow palettes you have, and you may have a matte eyeshadow that matches your brow color already. Once this is done, I'm taking this Anastasia Beverly Hills Volumizing Tinted Brow Gel to run through the brow hairs. This is a nice little trick to use, especially if your brows are a different color than that of your hair. I'm using the shade Taupe on Allie because it's a lighter shade with a cool undertone. So it's going to lighten her brows up a bit, but bring it closer to the same undertone as her blonde hair. To begin on the eyes, I'm picking up this shade here from the Buxom Forever Babe eyeshadow palette and pressing this onto the outer half of the eye with a flat eyeshadow brush before switching over to a fluffy brush to blend that pigment up and outwards. I'm not adding any more shadow on with a fluffy brush. It's completely clean. I'm just using it to diffuse the shadow out so we get a soft veil of color on the lid. To build on top of this, I'm going to pick up this shadow here and brushing this along the lash line before smoking it out with our fluffy brush. The goal isn't to pack on these shadows, but rather build it up slowly to achieve that soft blended result. After each blend, I take a step back, see what I need to adjust, and then go back in with shadow to build up more depth around the outer corner and crease. So while it may seem quite subtle, we can see how impactful a little shadow can be. Now picking up this shimmer here onto my finger, I'm tapping this right onto the center of the lid, which I think adds lots of dimension to this look, while also adding a touch of glamour. The next shade we're using is this bright cream color, and I'm popping this right into the corner for that bright open-dyed effect that I think looks so youthful and flattering. Now, because I want to keep the lower lash line quite clean and simple, the only shadow I'm going to use here to add a touch of smokiness is the very first shadow that we had used on the upper lid. One last thing I'm going to do is pick up this deep tone here and with a pencil brush, wiggle this right through the upper lashes. I know applying eyeliner can be, it can be intimidating for a lot of people, myself included, but this will give us a similar effect by giving depth to the lash line. Next up, I'm taking this Buxom Lash Party Volumizing Mascara that I got in their holiday duo and running this generously through her top lashes. This is the shade Blackest Black, and this duo is actually a great deal because you get 2 full-size mascaras for $30. So the value is definitely there, and I really build this up to give us that bold, voluminous look. Now, for those of you who want to apply false lashes, I'm going to pick up these individuals from Velour and apply just 2 or 3 3 of these on. Honestly, I do makeup for a living, and I still struggle with putting on false lashes, so I know beginners can find it difficult too. But I think individuals are way easier to put on than strip lashes. The ends don't lift up, they can look more natural, and I like how customizable they can be. So now that the eyes are done, I'm going to head back to our complexion to wipe off the powder, and we can see it leaves behind a brightening effect that looks so glam and soft. To complement the cream blush we used earlier, I'm taking this Kosas Baked blush in the color Hype and dusting this right onto the high points of her cheeks, which ties in that 90-esque theme we're going for. I mean, I feel like this could even veer bridal as well, don't you think? The clean under eye, the pop of color on the cheeks, the eye makeup, it's all starting to really come together. After this is applied, I'm using this Fenty Demi Glow highlighter in the shade Prosecco and popping this onto the areas I'm looking to get a little extra glow from. So the cheekbones, down the center of the nose, the cupid's bow, pretty much anywhere and everywhere I want that radiant glow from within effect. For lips today, I'm going to use this Buxom Babe Celebration Lip Gloss and Lip Liner Kit, which includes a full-size Powerline Plumping Lip Liner in the shade Hush Hush Henna, a full-size Full-On Plumping Lip Cream in the shade Dolly, and 3 mini Full-On Plumping Lip Polishes in the shade Celeste, Serena, and Sophia. So taking the lip liner, I'm tracing along the borders of her lips to get that defined plump lip shape. This gift set is actually a really great value too, because not only do you get all these products that you can use together to complement each other, but they also stand really strong on their own. You know what I mean? Like if you want a matte lip, you'd only use the lip liner to trace and fill in the lip. Or if you're going for a natural hint of color with a juicy finish, you'd use the gloss alone. But it's how I'm going to use these together that really takes this glam to that 90s supermodel level. And another thing I like about these lip liners is that on the other side of them, there's a brush, which is really useful for times like this when I want to fade that liner inwards. So next up, I'm taking the Full-On Plumping Lip Cream in the shade Dolly and applying this right on top. You know, this is such a pinch me moment because some of you may remember in the very first tutorial I ever posted here on YouTube that this gloss in this same exact shade was my all-time favorite. And then all these years later, it's still being my favorite. It's such a it's such a full circle moment for me. I have one with me everywhere I go. I have one in my makeup kit, my car, Celine's diaper bag, everywhere I go, because it truly is so good. Now what you could do is take one of these mini plumping lip polishes, this is the shade Celeste, and applying this just to the center of the lips. Because this has a sparkling reflect in the formula, it's really going to make the lips look plump and juicy. I mean, if that's not a 90s lip combo right there, I don't know what is. Now to finish off, I'm going to use this One Size Until Dawn setting spray to set and lock this look into place, which makes this the final step and how I created this beginner-friendly look on a naturally beautiful model.